Hey guys, this is AJ22 coming today with another review of Yu-Gi-Oh! I originally had something else planned for today, but it didn't quite work out, so I'm just gonna save it for another week. Anyway, today we were talking about Chapter 6 of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga, titled Into the Fire. And I don't know why, but whenever I'm thinking of these early chapters of the manga, I just don't think of this one. It's like I just straight up don't remember that it exists. Not that it's bad, just that it doesn't leave any real impression on me. So I'm gonna do my best to make this chapter seem interesting, but if I don't realize it's not for lack of trying. Not to say that there aren't some good things in here, because there absolutely are. First of all, just kind of immediately this chapter has a larger presence from Anzu than what we've been getting lately, other than in her typical damsel in distress or ballbuster kind of roles. The high school festival is coming up, and since she's the representative of their class, to who I don't know because the school doesn't seem to have an administration, but she is the representative of their class, so it is her responsibility to put her class's festival booth together. And so, of course, because, as I mentioned, they don't have an administration at their school, she's up in front of the class taking suggestions. And we get some good suggestions, and we get some horrible suggestions, and we get a suggestion from Hanasaki that's just plain embarrassing. Because Hanasaki is quite literally the kind of loser that Yugi would be if the manga weren't actually about him. And of course, Jonouchi's idea is perverted because he's Jonouchi. And it seems like they're allowed to do pretty much anything for their festival booth. They could put on a show, they could cook food, they could stage wrestling style fights if they wanted to. I would say that just so long as they don't break the law, they're allowed to do whatever they want, but clearly there aren't any laws in this universe, so that isn't entirely accurate. But it's this universe's equivalent of that kind of thing. And it is Yugi, of course, because he is the protagonist, who comes up with the idea that the class decides to run with, which is carnival games. They are literally going to do up their booth with a few different carnival games, including a life-size version of a little spring-loaded toy, which I thought was a really interesting idea. And just look how precious Yugi is here. It's just so freaking cute. Even though he's not technically the hero of this story, he's just the protagonist of this story. Even though the other Yugi is the hero of this story. Because of the other Yugi's presence in this story, because of the puzzle and everything else that's happened to Yugi, he has friends now, and he has more confidence than he did before, and it's helping him to become a better person, to become a happier person. You kind of get the sense that Yugi wouldn't have spoken up about his idea however long ago it was before the series started. And it's just really cool to see how happy it has made him to get so many other people so pumped up about his idea. So we get an idea of what the festival is going to look like, and luckily Yugi's class actually pulls the most popular event in space. They're having fun putting the booth itself together and building the games and just generally working together to accomplish something as a group. It's all a very fulfilling kind of situation, one that you can't really imagine getting much better. This is when things are going to go to shit, isn't it? Yep, this is when things go to shit. This is Goro, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, who is pretty much just Ushio from the first chapter, but with a different hairstyle. And his attitude is actually about the same, too. He's a complete dick. See, he wants that space, that prized space that Yugi's class drew out of the lottery, and he's willing to do pretty much anything to get it. He and his classmates are the typical entitled bullies. In fact, it's the kind of situation where I kind of feel like he and his classmates never actually win this spot in the lottery. They just kind of always drive out whichever class does. And if Anzu and Yugi and their classmates had known about that, they could have avoided this whole situation by just trading spots with these guys, by just saying, hey, you take this spot, and just not worrying about it. And yeah, that would have been giving in to a bully, but they would have avoided all of this conflict to come, and we wouldn't have had this kind of forgettable chapter. But they didn't know, so Goro and his classmates bring in their giant grill that they use to make these cabbage pancake things. That's apparently their thing, they do it every year. They beat the shit out of Jonouchi with their fists, and then beat the shit out of Yugi without ever touching him, apparently, which seems about right. And of course, of those two, it's Yugi who ends up in the school infirmary for what seems like the better part of a day. And Anzu is just so dejected. Her big project as the class representative has been ruined. Yugi, who came up with this idea and got his moment to shine, has had that ruined. And it causes her to tear up, which causes Yugi to transform into the other Yugi. He calls Goro out very similarly to how he called out Ushio, and the two of them, of course, play a game. They use Goro's own giant grill as sort of an air hockey table, but instead of air, they use the heat from the grill, and instead of a puck, they use a circular block of ice with some explosive in the center that Yugi was able to acquire on a street corner, because of course there's no law in this world to prevent the sale and distribution of dangerous chemicals. And the entire goal of the game is to keep volleying the puck back and forth, try and make sure the puck is on your opponent's side of the field when the ice melts to the point that the explosive comes in contact with the hot grill and goes off. The difference between this game and the game back in Jailbreak is the fact that back in Jailbreak, while the game was equally simple. It was also as much a game of wits as anything else, and it was over very, very quickly. There wasn't a chance for it to become boring. This game is boring. You have two guys standing at opposite ends of an incredibly hot grill, smacking explosive back and forth between the two of them using metal spatulas, in a scenario where either one of them could explode at any second. And I'm bored, because it's several pages of them just smacking the puck back and forth at each other. And Yugi does have to use his wits to get out of the situation, to win the situation. He realizes that Goro is so much stronger than him that eventually he's going to be too tired out to return the puck anymore, and he's just going to lose by default. So on one of the returns, he uses his spatula to chip the puck so that when Goro hits it full force the next time, the ice breaks and the explosive goes off on Goro's side. The other Yugi, who is maybe barely more athletic than the regular Yugi, managed to win a contest that involved athletics using his wits, and I really appreciate that. It's a really interesting aspect of the character. But he was in a similar disadvantageous position back in Jailbreak and won in a similar manner, using his wits rather than out-muscling the opponent. And it just managed to be more interesting. I also have a bit of an issue here with how this ends. Back in Jailbreak, the other Yugi was dealing with an escaped murderer. Here, he's just dealing with some high school dickhead. And yet, he still burns the guy. He doesn't burn him to death like he did Prisoner 777 back in Jailbreak, but he still sets off an explosive right in the guy's face and definitely causes him some pretty serious injury. I mean, heck, the only reason we know that the guy isn't actually dead is because Yugi has a little internal monologue directed at the guy, and because there's no mention of anyone finding a burnt corpse when they return the next day to finish setting up for the carnival. And they do get to set up their booth and have their booth for the carnival, and it's a huge hit. Everybody loves it. The good guys win the day, but it still rubs me the wrong way that the other Yugi treated just some kid so badly. I already explained that we know from his Shadow games that the other Yugi is not an evil person. Otherwise, that would come to light in one of his Shadow games. Shadow games reveal the competitor's true selves. And yet what he does here comes off as evil, as a complete overreaction. But we do learn some stuff about the other Yugi later on in the series that I think explains this very well. This is a little bit of a spoiler, so if you don't want spoiled, you can end the video here. It's not going to hurt anything. I think I've already been pretty clear about how I feel about this chapter. We already know at this point in the story that the Millennium Puzzle is an Egyptian artifact, an ancient Egyptian artifact. And we later learn that the other Yugi likewise comes from ancient Egypt, that his spirit is being carried by the Millennium Puzzle. And there's a line that he uses in this chapter that he's used before, but I've never really talked about it that much. He says that Goro trespassed on the souls of everyone involved in that carnival booth. And that may sound like a cool line that was just thrown in there to sound cool, but it's actually very important if you consider what it is exactly that the other Yugi means. He doesn't at this point remember his origins, but he still has the sensibilities of an ancient Egyptian. Not only was ancient Egypt a very eye for an eye kind of society, he also had a very interesting way of thinking of the soul. To an ancient Egyptian, the soul isn't just the core essence of a person like it is in Christianity, for example. The ancient Egyptian concept of the soul was actually made up of 5 parts: the Ib, Shut, Ren, Ba, and Ka. And what the other Yugi is referencing here is the Ba. Goro has trespassed on the Ba of everyone involved in that carnival booth. The Ba being the personality of those people, the aspects of those people that make them unique, their wants, their desires, their dreams. Everything from their hobbies to their sense of style. In the context of the ancient Egyptian belief system, to attack the things that a person was passionate about would be tantamount to trying to destroy their soul. So even if he doesn't remember his past, the fact that he has that kind of sensibility built into his core personality explains why he would react so strongly to Goro behaving this way. And while this explains his actions and goes a long way towards excusing them, it doesn't mean that I necessarily like them. I'm all for villains in a shonen manga or anime getting what's coming to them if they genuinely deserve it. But in this context, in the context of this chapter, I can't help but feel that the other Yugi just took things a little too far, and that puts me off. But maybe you're different. Maybe you absolutely love this chapter. Maybe it's your favorite of the entire franchise. And if that's the case, that's fine. But I would like you to let me know in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.